In today's video, nothing important will happen. I have a lot of things happening, or a lot of things might happen, and I've just gotten to the point I decided it doesn't matter. Some things will work, some things will not work. They are probably not the things I'm focusing on, but it's okay, because as long as I keep doing something, eventually something will work. And if I can not worry too much about the details, life gets a whole lot easier to deal with. Yeah. All right, stay tuned. Here we go. I have the ranch listed for sale. There's like 3 or 4 options there. It might sell tomorrow. In fact, I had a guy come out yesterday and looked at it. Maybe he'll decide, well, this place is wonderful, or, the other place is wonderful, or whatever, It's probably like dating or getting a job or anything else. Is you probably have to send out 1,000 resumes, or you have to have 100 people come out to look at it before you find the one. Okay, that's fine. So, the ranch could sell tomorrow. And then it'll be this mad panic of, oh my God, I've got to get rid of all this stuff. What am I going to do with it? So the title up there, not homeless, ? Is if the ranch sells, what do I do with all my stuff? But in the last week or two, it finally kind of started to gel that if this happens or this happens, it's okay. I don't know which is going to happen. And I have kind of a preference for what I would like to do. But if any of the 5 things happen, it'll work out okay. What do I want? And then in the last month or so, it's been just kind of accepting the idea that one way or another, it's going to be okay, right? I think that was the biggest epiphany in the last 2 weeks even. Like yesterday, a guy came to look at the property. It's the first buyer that's come out here to look, and he looked at several other places, and I got the feeling this wasn't what he wanted, but that's okay. It was only the first guy. But I remember thinking in the moment, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does, but if the place sells, I got money, but I'm going to miss the place and the opportunity I had out here. If the place doesn't sell, I've got everything I have out here, but I don't have any money. I've been in a remarkably fortunate position that I have attracted all of you people that are watching these videos, and in that group, there's been a lot of people that have helped support me on this journey, and I'm always grateful for that. I'll have an idea and I'll put it out there, and somebody will chirp up. It's like, I was like, hey, can everybody give me $5 and I can go do this thing? And, by the next day, somebody's like, okay, I sent it to you. It's on the way. You're like, oh, okay, well, thank you very much. Or, I'll get a little ding and I look over and PayPal says I got $400. Wow, okay. I'm used to my world where I'm scraping by, and I forget that other people just have money that they can't afford to invest, or just give me. But yeah. So, sincerely, thank you. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. It's like, I've always wanted to be the person helping somebody. It's weird to have somebody helping me, but I do appreciate it. And, over the years, there's been, times where I've helped other people, and, you stop on the side of the road, help somebody change a tire, you pay it forward, so there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of good people left. That's worth remembering. So it doesn't matter. It does, but it doesn't. It's going to be okay. It's going to work. Something is going to work. And this is like an old cartoon probably. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And maybe the thing you're working on isn't what ends up being the thing. But if you just sit there, it's like Mike Dooley, one of the guys on The Secret, the movie The Secret. He's like, you got to get out and get in the dance. You've got to take the first step. if you're just sitting there on your couch in your underwear, it's like Oprah isn't going to call. But if you get out there and you do something, that long roundabout trail, somebody's going to notice you doing something. I don't know how many times on the 22 I would be riding my bike and I would just stop, take a picture, fix a flat tire, rest because I was tired. I just got up a big hill. So I'd be off to the side, just, trying not to throw up on my shoes kind of thing. Or just letting the sun recharge the battery, halfway up a hill, you just run out of legs and you run out of battery, so you pull off and you let the sun shine, and you look over, okay, I got enough, I can make it up the hill now. Plus, then you've had time to breathe. But just by being out there, I would have people stop and see how it was, and then they start checking me out and, looking at the bike, and they're like, oh, this is really cool, and they'd ask you what you were doing, and, so I'd say, it's, there's 22 veterans a day that are committing suicide. And so my goal was to ride 22 states in 2022 to help raise awareness for the 22 veterans. And I wouldn't even ask, but they'd be like, oh, do you want some money? Here's $20, you can get yourself something to eat today. I'm like, oh, that just meant the world that day, But you had to be out there doing it. You didn't have to ask for money, but you had to be out there doing it. I just did a major brain dump video that was probably over an hour and a half long. I will probably edit it, maybe. It might be out of order. I might cut and splice it. We don't know. These things just happen sometimes. If this is not your kind of video, don't worry about it. Just move on to the next one. There's bunnies or cat videos, or there's a whole bunch of videos. I shot videos for like 17 years now. Go back and look at the old ones. Some of those are pretty good. Or watch this one. Sometimes people wonder why I do the things I do. I'm not sure if I even know, but this might give you a glimpse inside. Here we go. Yeah, sure, I'm just gonna wing it here. Let me move my screens around so I can see what I'm talking about here. So, I just wanted to say thank you to all of the new subscribers and all of the people that keep watching and clicking on my videos. That's just awesome. I don't know, it's like, in the last 5 videos, I've had 3 that have gone over 1,000. Normally, I'd get 100 people watching a video, so I'm like, yay! Maybe I finally found my tribe, or maybe I finally did something that anybody's interested in, or something like that. But like the electric KLR project has just been bonkers. Honestly, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday or day before. I guess it was yesterday. I expected a lot of hate mail over this because, oh, why you ruin classics? So yeah, put that in the comments if you know where that came from. But just a KLR has been famously known as the world's best motorcycle that's not good at anything, or words to that effect. It's like, you can do anything with the KLR, but it doesn't do anything particularly well. I rode one to Alaska, and then I moved to Texas on that motorcycle. This was a lot of years ago, but I started in Edmonton, so that's kind of a shortcut to Alaska. But still, I did Alaska and Northwest Territories and the Yukon and Dempster Highway and Top of the World Highway and well past the Arctic Circle. And there's videos about that on the channel here if you're interested. But, and then I sold that motorcycle when I got to Texas because I didn't have time to deal with importing. It was a Canadian model, and I thought, well, there's KLRs on every corner. I'll just buy another one, when I need one. And then this one ended up not being quite as good as the first one. It had some issues, but it's still a KLR, and I got a lot of use out of it. Basically kind of felt like I was wearing it out towards the end, and reliability wasn't super good. And then I sold the truck, and then I thought, well, The KLR was great if I had a truck. I could walk home and get the truck and go back and get it again. So, yeah, that was just kind of like, hang on, I gotta kill the bug. That's gotta put a headache on him. Alright, we're back. It's been warm enough lately, the bloodsuckers are popping up again. Kissing bugs, kissing big beetles, something like that. Like, generally, it's like, yeah, I'm wearing my jacket and my toque in here because it's 47 degrees. Oh, it's 48 degrees now, you know. This little text on the bottom of the screen doesn't update in real time. I just put that in there. So it's cold in the morning, but then I think it's going to be 65 or 70 degrees today, you know. And then we've had days where it didn't get above 45 or 50 already, you know, but then, you know, it's not like real winter, you know. But anyway, yeah, I just kind of want to start off with thanks and welcome to all the new subscribers. Yeah, that's been cool. I don't know, you know, if you don't have a YouTube channel of your own, you would never see the analytics on here, but, you know, the first day, this most recent video, the range testing video, I got 145 views in the first day, and like I said, there was times that 145 was a good video. Like, it would get to 145 and then stop. You know, we've got almost 3,000 subscribers, but, you know, and I do the same thing. I'll subscribe to a channel because I like 2 videos, and then I'll never watch any more of their videos. Maybe it was just a random thing. They did something I liked, and then they, you know, maybe that was unusual, you know, for that channel or whatever, you know. Anyway, and then you get this hockey curve. I've heard it called that, you know, it's like a hockey stick. It'll go, and then all of a sudden it cranks up, and, you know, end of the second day, 990 views, and it's still going up. I mean, it's not even a leveling off for nighttime hardly. You know, I've had some videos, they go up in the day and then they stop, and then they go up in the day and then they stop. And it's from a YouTube channel success process. If you do really well in the first 2 or 3 days, YouTube will keep promoting your video. And then once you'll get to a plateau and it'll just stop, or the robots at YouTube will just say, oh, well, this one's no longer popular. We're going to quit sending traffic there. Okay. Which is why things like subscribers and notifications are really important to a channel. If you really want to help your favorite channels out, if you turn on notifications, and it's different for, you know, if you're running Windows or Mac or Linux or Android or iPhone or whatever you got. If you happen to see a video, if you can watch it in the first 6 hours of when it releases, it's going to help the channel do better long term. I mean, it doesn't cost you anything but your time, and I know time is expensive. You can get more money, but when you run out of time, that's it. You don't get any more. So, yeah. Anyway, it's just kind of a fun thing. We're like, wow, you know. And it's like, yeah, I'm like, I don't often push subscribers because according to this chart, only 1.8% of the people that watch this video are subscribed. Right? So it's like, you know, I've got a lot of people that subscribe to my channel, and very few of them are actually the ones watching the videos. So, you know, I would say it's cool if you subscribe. Again, for the sake of the channel, when I hit 1,000 subscribers is when I was eligible to start making money off of the videos. If you have less than 1,000, you don't get any of the ad revenue. And again, sorry about the ads. You know, I know they're annoying, but there were a couple of years after COVID, my only real source of income was YouTube ads. Yeah, that's how I bought food, you know. So some of the projects I was doing then, this was after I sold the truck. I wasn't working. and I had enough solar power to run the grinder, and then there was a while I siphoned the old gas out of the school bus to run the generator so that I could run the welder. And all of the projects I built were with the steel that came from the school bus seat frames. So like when, I lived in the school bus, I took all the seats out, and I had this giant pile of seats, and I would just cut the frames apart. And that's how I made some of the projects. Turtle and Delta, the trikes and quads, they were made out of school bus seats, frames. Because that's what I had, right? And I sometimes feel myself getting annoyed with somebody who are like, oh, you should go do this or you should go buy this. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Most of what I'm working with is what I have because I bought it 5 or 6 years ago. The motor that's in the KLR now, the electric KLR project, that's the same motor I've used on Blue Bike electric trike, the original Turtle, and the Delta trike, and I think some iterations in between. I just keep taking that motor and controller and moving it from one thing to the next, so 4 or 5 videos ago when I said the last ride of the Delta trike, well, that was why, the Delta trike worked, and that was kind of a funny thing, actually. I wanted to talk about that once. The Delta trike, all of a sudden I realized that of all of the things that I tried, that was the first thing that actually worked, which is horrible in a way, but I kept trying to make, I really wanted a tadpole trike. I wanted 2 wheels in the front and 1 wheel in the back, right? And I don't think we need I think I've talked this one far enough. Okay, let's go back to here. Yay! This is my OBS screen that I use. I do a lot of internal videos, or some days I'll wake up in the morning and not really know what I want to work on, and I'll record a video, and just the process of talking it out with no interruptions because there's nobody else here. If I explain what I'm doing to somebody else, they're always jumping in with their 2 bits worth, and it just completely derails me. So this is perfect for an introvert. I'll talk to myself, and then I've got some software that can transcribe the video. It doesn't do a very good job, and then I'll just archive it, and sometimes I go back and look later, and I'm like, oh yeah, there was an idea I forgot about, or I'll realize at the end of 2 hours I didn't do anything useful, so I just delete the thing then. But this kind of a screen, it gives me a lot of, I got the calendar, I can remember when I recorded it. OBS does also put a date timestamp on the file name, and then I can have little metrics on there. And some of that is just a reminder. The technology exists where I could have it automatically read the battery voltage and put it on the screen in real time. I just haven't gotten it done yet. I've got probably some of the parts already, Voltage and temperature sensors and humidity sensors are pretty easy. In fact, I've got a clock that has a thermometer built into it now. That was a recent exciting purchase. But anyway. Yeah, so I wanted to say this once because I had this sudden realization when I didn't notice it when I was doing it. I'm taking the Delta trike apart. I took the solar panel off, put it back in the bus for the next project. Completely took it to bits. And I had not at that time decided I was going to put that motor on the KLR, which is funny. You think, oh, I would have done that on purpose. No, I really didn't. I had just put, I think that was about the same time I put the ranch up for sale. And if I look back at, I'm going to just look real quick, which one came out first. Yeah, okay. So November 10th, I put the video up that the ranch was for sale, and November 15th was Delta Trike, the last ride. And what I was kind of going through there was, if the ranch sells, what am I going to do with all this stuff? Okay. Yes, a lot of you have watched these videos. Very few of you are within 500 miles of me. You know, if I put out the word, for instance, does anybody want this project? You know, come get it. You know, $100, $500, whatever, right? Most of you live far enough away, it wouldn't be worth anybody's time to come here and get something, right? And none of my neighbors have any value in this stuff. You know, I'm pretty sure, I mean, this might be a little bit facetious, but nobody in this county knows how to ride a bicycle, you know. There was one guy, one of my neighbors, in fact, one of the guys that gave me a bunch of the old bikes, he was all excited one day. He decided to get himself a bike. I mean, he gave me, the reason he gave me the bikes, he had bought, I think, an RV trailer or something like that at an auction, and it had all the bikes in it when he bought it, you know. So there was kids' bikes and broken bikes and, you know, whatnot. So I got to use all those for spare parts. Okay. One of those bikes is the bike that I rode to California on the 22 trip back in 2022. I rode that bike that he gave me all the way to California, and then it completely just disintegrated. I mean, there was, that doesn't really matter, but the bottom bracket, you know, like where your pedals are, there's a bearing on the pedal shaft, and that just completely came apart. It was old and rusty, and it literally, as I'm riding, I could feel it grinding and metal was falling out of it, you know. So I'm like, yeah, I think we're done with that one. So I managed to get it to a bike shop, and thankfully then I had enough Patreons and YouTube members that were sending money that when I grind to a halt at the bike shop when they opened, and I'm like, I need a new bike, and they're like, they freaked out because they looked out at what I had, you know, old rusty bike dragging a trailer with a solar panel, and I'm like, no, just give, you know, sell me a bike, I'll put it together, I'll do, you know, oh, okay, you know, I'll figure out how to attach the different parts. I moved the motor and the controller from the old rusty bike onto the new bike, and then moved the hitch over, and I think I spent 2 days in a motel getting everything reconfigured, and then we were good. And that was the Giant bike that is now my good bike, right? Anyway, yeah, so Rex, I'm pretty sure Rex gave me the old rusty bike and the other bikes. So he's got a bike, but he doesn't live here anymore, you know. So that was, and then there was one other guy that was talking about he was going to ride a bike to work because he saw me riding all the time. And then they left, and I've noticed parts of a bike sticking up out of a bush on their old property. So I'm like, I don't have any need to go pick up random bikes laying in bushes anymore. And I don't know, it feels like trespassing, you know, if it's, you know, on somebody else's property. I'm not going to go take their bike. I've just been morbidly curious. I wanted to walk in there and just look at it to see what it was, because you can just see a part of it sticking up, but at the same time it's like, well, I've got parts of 10 bikes out here I don't really need anymore, right? Yeah, anyway. But yeah, long story longer kind of thing. After I took the Delta Trike apart, it was later that evening, all of a sudden I came down from the excitement of, I remembered that I really enjoyed working on that kind of stuff. I've been working at the motel for almost a year, and I've been so busy at the motel. Well, this is going to be one of those hour-long videos that doesn't go anywhere. Sorry. I started at the motel only planning on working 10 or 15 hours a week, and I was going to make like $15 an hour, not really king's ransom. But I was thinking if I worked 2 or 3 days a week, that would be fine. And I was going to do maintenance. So I ran around with the weed whacker, pushed the jungle back a little bit. There was some bushes growing right up against the back of the motel. We cut them down, tried to kill them, kill the roots, got some stump remover, chemical kind of stuff. Washing machine broke. I took it apart, figured out how to replace the belt, got it back together. That kind of thing. They had two ladies working for housekeeping. And there was one day that the manager needed help 1 day a week kind of thing. So then I learned how to do rooms and was like, well, it's not difficult work. And, one of the jobs I did in the Navy was what we called first lieutenant, which is essentially the Navy's janitors. It's a temporary job. So everybody in the Navy at some point in their first 4 years will do a TAD kind of a job, and mine was first lieutenant. So for 90 days, I did, I learned how to strip and wax floors and clean toilets and, that kind of stuff. And, so when you're done, then you go back to being an aircraft mechanic. Okay, well, I was like 19 or something like that. So that's quite a while ago, but it's like, okay, you know how to clean something. And my job as an aircraft mechanic was all, it really came down to learning the process and having really careful attention to detail. So if there's one speck of lint on the floor, you see it, or when you get done dusting, put everything, like if you walk into a hotel, the remotes are carefully laid out and they put the soap in a certain spot. And, I've seen people, I've had people that I tried to train, and that spare roll of toilet paper, they would just put it randomly on the back of the toilet. It's like, no, it's got writing on it. It should at least be right side up and have, if there's a label, face it out so that it's straight. Just stupid stuff like that. The soap, you put it a certain way so that the label is straight, because there's, 10% of the population is really going to be bothered if that's crooked. The other people, they don't care. They just, they might not even notice that is soap. They just fall down on the bed, don't even take their clothes off. They lay on top, and the next day they get up and leave, and they don't even look at half the stuff that you do. But it's Well, what happened then is the housekeepers all quit. Same day. So the manager, she's like, so do you want to have I think we called it an upgrade. I went from part-time to full-time. I worked 6 or 7 days a week for months. Yeah, there was nobody in this town wanted to work. It's kind of sad. There's times that the restaurants will close early because there's nobody there to cover the shift. That kind of thing. So, little town, what are you going to do? So, finally, in the last, officially the 7th of December, so that's 2 weeks ago now. That was supposed to be my last day. And then we decided, I'll work 1 day a week and maybe 2 if something really bad happens, because it's kind of slow now. So the manager will clean a few rooms, and then if she gets way behind, I'll get a call and I'll go in and I'll do some rooms. But that's why I get to do videos now, is I've actually got time. And part of that was I have the ranch listed for sale. There's 3 or 4 options there. It might sell tomorrow. In fact, I had a guy come out yesterday and looked at it. You never know. I'm pretty sure he looked at least one other property. Maybe he'll decide, this place is wonderful, or, the other place is wonderful, or whatever, You never really know. It's probably like dating or getting a job or anything else, is you probably have to send out 1,000 resumes, or you have to have 100 people come out to look at it before you find the one. Okay, that's fine. So, the ranch could sell tomorrow. And then it'll be this mad panic of, oh my God, I've got to get rid of all this stuff. What am I going to do with it? So the title up there, Not Homeless, ? Exclamation point. is if the ranch sells, what do I do with all my stuff, and what am I going to do next? So that's been one thought bubble or storm cloud following me around, lately. Ranch could sell, ranch may not sell. The reason I wanted to sell the ranch is I got to the point I don't have enough money to do the stuff I wanted to do out here anymore, as far as all my projects and finishing the house. It's kind of visible. In the background, you still see the insulation, and then I put up a vapor barrier. So I never did drywall or paneling or whatever. Right? And the ceiling is the same way. It's just insulation. At least it's insulated now. So it sells or it doesn't sell. Right? And then I have been applying for other jobs, and this was a kind of a thing where working at the motel, I'm busy, but I'm not making a lot of money. Now, I don't need a lot of money out here, but I really don't think I'm making enough money that I could afford to go buy a vehicle that would be any good, because anything I buy that's used is going to need fixing. The reason I sold my truck when I did was it actually was running good then, and I wanted to sell it before it broke again. Since I had bought the truck, I had the transmission rebuilt, the whole front end suspension, I forget, the hub on one side was worn out and the knuckle on the other side was worn out or something. Part of it was just from this road, so you drive up and down this road enough times, eventually something breaks, things like motor mounts, or, it just takes a beating on the truck. The new shiny fancy trucks really aren't made for out here. My truck worked when I bought it. It was used. And after living out here for a while, half of the switches didn't work, like the power windows, power locks, that kind of stuff. They quit working after a while. One window regulator broke just from hitting the bumps. I was going down the bumpy road with the windows down, and I hear this thunk, and I go to roll the window up, and it didn't come up anymore. I'm like, okay, great, learned how to fix those, but just that kind of thing. So when I sold the truck, it was like, well, I had basically decided I quit my job in El Paso, bought the water tank, filled the water tank, and then sold the truck. Because I didn't want to have the truck sitting out here because the mice chewed everything up if you sat long enough. When I was riding the motorcycle, left the truck parked for a month or so, hear this funny noise. Here's a freaking rat building a nest. Not a mouse, but a rat in the truck. And I had several dead mice in the heater core. That kind of thing, right? The school bus, there's about this much radiator hose missing. Not just a hole, it's completely gone. Where whoever, mice or rats or whatever, chewed a hole, were drinking the antifreeze, and then just kept chewing the hose further and further back so they could get, as the level dropped, they just keep chewing it back, It's like, that can't be good, There's a lot of work if I ever decided to move the bus. It's going to take a while to put it back together and fix all the broken stuff just to drive it again. I mean, it ran when parked, but it's been a while. Coffee's cold. Anyway, the end of the day when I took the Delta trike apart, all of a sudden I was probably hungry and tired, and I got really emotional. I was actually sad. And it took me a while to figure out why. What the hell's wrong with me? I don't usually, I'm sometimes depressed, but I wasn't actually normally sad. I think it's different. And I just realized that the Delta was the first project that actually did what it was supposed to do and didn't break very often. Right? It got to town and back many, many times. It was solar powered, which was the coolest thing ever. If I went to work and parked it in the sun, by the time it was time to come home, that battery was fully charged. Now, you get home in the afternoon, so then I had to plug it in to charge it at home again. But it proved the idea, right? That, hey, this could work. Oh, hang on. Oh, yep, sunrise. One of my stupid projects is I log what time the sun comes up every day. Maybe I'll make a sunrise calendar sometime. 7:07 logged. Okay. I just, when I'm sitting here, all of a sudden I see a shadow start to form. Anyway, yeah, it's up there now. There's a pot on the stove here that is shiny, and so that'll just bling. It's like, oh, the sun's coming up. In the summer, the sun is at a different angle, and so it'll shine right in my face, but in the winter, the sun is far enough the other way. If you don't live on solar power, you just think the sun rises in the east and you're done. You know, it's like, no, it swings quite a bit from summer to winter. It's in a different spot every day. So, yeah, anyway. So, yeah, I just was like, the Delta was the first thing that actually worked, and I just took it apart. And it was like, all of a sudden, it clicked in my head. I'm selling the ranch, and I'm not going to be, if I go anywhere else, I'm not going to have the resources I have here. You know, I've got, 40 acres. In my head, I still think 80, and then I have to remember, no, I sold half of it a couple years ago. And, you know, I can make noise out here. You know, if I just sit there and run the grinder and the welder, well, the welder itself doesn't make noise, but the grinder makes an awful racket, and the generator, and, you know, I can be arcing and sparking out there and not worry about starting a fire because I'm standing on sand, you know. Whatever, I can, you know, you can't do that if you live in an apartment. And most of my life, I've lived in apartments, my adult life. Growing up on a farm, I mean, my dad was always doing that kind of stuff. He was always making something, you know. And then I was like, this is the first time I've had nearly the setup that I always wanted, you know. I never did get to build my big shop that I wanted to build. You know, with a cement floor and a steel welding table would have been really nice, and, you know, a place that, with a roof, you know. End of the day here, I have to pick everything up and put it away in case it rains or something like that. You know, you don't want to leave your welder outside in the rain, so you pick it up and bring it all inside again. So that's kind of annoying. But it's the first time it's the first place I've owned a welder, you know, to where I could do stuff. All right, so then I had this all of a sudden was like, oh, what am I going to do, you know? And I'm still not sure, you know. But in the last week or two, it finally kind of started to gel that if this happens or this happens, it's okay. I don't know which is going to happen. And I have kind of a preference for what I would like to do. But if any of the 5 things happen, it'll work out okay. So let me just kind of run through the list for anybody that's still watching by now. Sell the ranch, or sell part of the ranch, or don't sell the ranch. You know, and it comes down to, I put the ranch up for sale, but we still need somebody with money that wants my place, that likes what I have. You know, it could be they'll buy it and bulldoze the house and drag the bus off to the metal recycler. You know, maybe there's nothing I did that they care about. That's fine. You know, as long as I got the money, I don't care. You know, or they might buy, because there's 2 lots. They're labeled 17 and 27. 17 faces the road. If somebody wanted to build a house and connect it to power, the power is down by the road. So they could buy 17 and not want the one where the house and the bus are. Or they could go the opposite way. Okay. So then I got to thinking, well, if somebody liked the house but didn't like the bus and they didn't want 17, I could spend a few days, put the bus back together, get the bus down onto 17, then I could still live on 17 and we'd sell the house and we'd sell 27. That's a possibility. Or it could go the other way. If they just wanted to live by the road, I'd still have my house. So that would be okay. When I came up with the number for $50,000 for the ranch, the way I looked at it is I would go buy, I'm all doing this in real time, this is kind of fun. OBS is the name of the software. It's Online Broadcasting Studio or something like that, or Open Broadcasting, maybe it's Open Broadcasting Studio. So you can mix a camera and, for instance, this is a web page, and I can just, I could come up with, my title screen, and then we got the full screen, and then we got the camera and a web page, and I can jump back and forth between a bunch of stuff. If I wanted to see what's the weather going to do today. Okay, there's a real-time weather forecast, which is probably not current because the sun isn't up yet, so we can reload that. There we go. Anyway, so let's go back and find our truck. So the thought was, if we had $50,000 and we're homeless, go buy this truck. This is U-Haul. They sell them when they get to a certain age. That one's just, 10, 11 years old, I guess? 11 or 12 years old. Okay. $10,000. Okay. One, I could use the truck to haul everything out of here. I do not want to put things in storage, but it might happen. In the end, I will end up with now the electric KLR, probably mounted to the rear bumper of this, and use it for just a short distance bike to go to the store kind of thing. And an electric bicycle probably, and then live in the back of the truck. And instead of a van, which has the rounded walls and the rounded roof, this is all square. It would be so much easier to build back there. Plus, the roof is high enough you can stand up, which is really nice. Okay, if you're gonna live back there, you could put windows in if you want. Since I use my computers a lot, the windows would give me reflections, so maybe I wouldn't put windows in. Another option, and back door rolls up. From what I understand, U-Haul can sell you replacement parts for your truck after you buy it, because they've got them all. So if you need brake pads, you just, they've got them, so they'll sell them to you. Or, it's just a regular truck. You could go to Napa and get your brake pads or whatever, but you could buy parts from them. I am pretty sure, if I understand it right, U-Haul has a factory that makes their own boxes, I think. If one of these trucks gets damaged, I think regionally they can replace a body panel. So like that big piece of, the side, it's one piece. They can just unbolt it or unrivet it and put a new one in, and then probably shoot some caulking around it so it doesn't leak. So what I got to thinking about, if I'm going to live in the back of that roll-up door may not be the best solution. So I could remove the roll-up door and buy a sheet of that same material and bolt it back there, and then cut like an RV style door into it, because a full-size regular house door wouldn't fit. The roof is too low. Or I could make a door, right? So that might happen. We still have to sell the ranch and have the money to go buy this thing. Okay. Sell the ranch, buy the truck, loads to the dump, just so that and this would be, you talk to the new buyer, hey, do you want this stuff? Oh, this would be kind of cool. Yeah, sure, leave it, or, oh God, get rid of it. Okay. Loads of stuff to the dump. And then loads of stuff to places like Goodwill, for example, that could, there's some stuff that other people could use, so I'll just donate it to them. Most of the tools I'll keep, but I may not need a table saw, plus it'll take up a lot of room in the back of my truck because I'm going to live back there. So, I'll talk to my neighbors, hey, do you want a table saw, $50 or whatever, whatever. And then whatever's left, then I put the truck together. So, I could build out the interior, like if I sort of like the bed that I've got now. Probably all the guys that do van life, they always make wood interiors because it looks nice, right? And then they all break because you go down a bumpy road, and that's one of the problems with motorhomes is they flex when they drive. And all of the wood is stapled and glued together, and eventually it just breaks. Okay. I want to build a welded steel interior structure. So my bed frame will be welded steel, that kind of thing. Maybe my computer desk will be welded steel. Maybe it'll hinge up against the side, so if I want to, park the bicycle inside when I'm driving, and then when I get to where I'm going, roll the bike out and then fold the desk down, something like that. Okay. So then I need all my tools at least up until the time I'm finished. And the part of the mad scramble is going to be, how long can I sit here before the new owner wants me gone, right? So when I took apart the Delta Trike, my thought was, one, I could maybe use that steel for another project, or two, now that it's taken apart, if I just take it to a metal recycler, I would get some money for the metal. So I'm going to have all of the leftover metal that I'm not using, and some of these projects, I'll just load them in a truck and take them. So by taking it apart that day, that was done. So that's one less thing to worry about, right? Yeah. Well, then all of a sudden I got to thinking, it's like, well, if the ranch doesn't sell, all of these random piles of parts around here, they're still what I need. So I don't need to, it doesn't make sense to start randomly throwing stuff away, and then 6 months later nobody bought the ranch, and I'm like, oh, I wish I still had that thing, So it's very awkward right now of, will it sell? Will I get the money that I hope? If it does sell for $50,000, and if I buy a truck for $10,000 or $11,000, could I live until retirement? Because it's only, I just put this on my calendar, I think it's 4.5 years now. It's less than 5 years until I get Social Security, which is not a lot of money, but I don't have a lot of money anyway, so, I got to fill that gap. So if I do sell the ranch and I buy the truck and I go truck camping, I figured it out. I could just about make it. It's not going to be really, it probably won't be enough, because you always end up buying one more thing that you forgot that you really should have, or whatever. So I thought, well, I should probably go get another job. Yes, I do have a job at the motel, but it's not making enough money to get to the next step. I'm just kind of hanging on, so I'm putting all my time into it. So when I'm working at the motel, I'm not here. I'm not building my projects. I'm not doing anything I enjoy. I get home and I'm tired, and I just sit here and veg out and, eat something and watch YouTube videos. And, that's not the thing I wanted to do, right? And I thought, well, if I had to work, I should probably get a job that makes more money then. So I started looking at Alaska again, which, could work. And then I thought, well, maybe there's jobs that are closer, right? So TxDOT, Texas Department of Transportation, basically they get the road guys, the highway. The one ad was drive adult-sized Tonka trucks. I'm like, oh, that sounds like fun, So you have a backhoe and a dump truck, and they go out and they fix things, I'm like, oh, that sounds like great job. So I applied, and I missed the cutoff, I think, the first time, and I kind of forgot about it. And then one day I'm like, oh, I should go look again. Another job opened up. So I was like, okay, that could be, I don't know, $40,000 or $50,000 a year. That's about what I was thinking I could make up in Alaska anyway. So then all of a sudden, okay, here's another idea spinning around in my head. If I got the job, I wouldn't have to sell the ranch. But it's the same as, getting a job is finding the right job, and getting a good interview and selling the ranch is finding the right person with enough money. I mean, everybody wants to buy a ranch, they just don't have the money. I mean, not everybody, but I see that in the comments quite often. Oh, I'd love to buy that place. And then you never hear back from them. It's like, okay, yeah. I'd love to date a supermodel too, but it's probably not going to happen. There's reasons. So this is the chaos in my head: is sell the ranch, or sell part of the ranch, or don't sell the ranch. If we sell the ranch, we got the money, we can go do the stuff. But we don't have the ranch. What I need is about $50,000, and don't sell the ranch. That would be great. Or I need, what if I could get, if I got the job, then I could afford to stay here. But then I don't have any time. It'd be the same thing. I'd be tired all the time, and I'd have money, but I wouldn't have time to build anything. Yeah, life is so unfair. You're like, oh, I could just, this last couple of weeks has been great. I've worked 1 day a week. I've got enough to buy food for, a month or two still. We're great. And if I work 1 day a week, I've got enough to buy the beans and rice anyway. So, we're basically set there. And I've had, like the electric KLR, I think I've put 4 days into that. 1 day I completely stripped the bike down, and then I had a break of a couple days. And then the next day I had basically figured out the motor mount. And the third day I had the wheel spinning. The fourth day I test rode it. The fifth day was the range test. Now there was a gap in between. But, I've been just amazed. Wow, look at how fast things are when you don't have a job in the way. Because if you work 6 or 7 days a week, you get home, you're tired, you don't want to mess with anything. And for me out here, because I don't have the shop, everything I do, I have to pick up, take outside. And if I have an allergy day, I just don't feel very good. And so those days, even if I really try, nothing happens, and then you're just frustrated. It's like, oh, I just can't concentrate. I can't, you grab a bunch of parts and you can't see how they're going to go together. It's one thing, like if I had a bolt-on kit, I would bolt it on. It's not a big deal. But if I have to invent it, I got to figure out how. It's not just follow the instructions. There is no instructions. It's, most of that you didn't see. I shot a bunch of video that I deleted, but here's the motor, here's the motorcycle. It should fit somewhere in here, and then how exactly does it fit? And you got to think, okay, up and down, fore and aft, and left and right. There's no bracket there. You need to make the bracket. So I spent a lot of time with scraps of wood, a couple 2x4s stacked on top of the bottom edge of the frame, and then sit the motor there, and then move it around, and then try to understand why the motor was where it was on the KLR. And there's geometry that has to work right, like the pivot on the suspension changes the length of the chain depending on if the wheel is all the way compressed or all the way down. So if you can get the sprocket in the same kind of a spot on the new motor, it won't be any worse than it was before. If you get it in the wrong spot, the chain is going to hit something, or it's going to be too loose, and then you sit on the bike and it gets too tight. KLR was funny. You had to leave quite a bit of chain slack in it just to account for if there was a load on the bike or not. And you wouldn't want to have to, say if you went to the store and then you loaded the bike with all your groceries and you look at the chain and now it's too tight. Now you got to sit there with the bike fully loaded and readjust the chain again. So you try not to do that. So they left some slack in the chain. So you just had to understand that and then get the motor in the right spot. And now I'm looking at it, I'm like, The motor is where it needs to be, and it just totally killed where I thought I could put the batteries. There was all this room, and the motor isn't down on the bottom where I wanted it to be, because then the chain would hit something. So I had to put the motor in the right spot, which leaves a gap under the motor and a smaller gap in front of the motor, because I had to clear some of the suspension behind the motor, and then the space above the motor isn't as big as it would have been, so you're like, in the beginning, you're like, oh, this will be easy. You just, put it down on the bottom where it's out of the way. It's like, oh no, something else has to go there, and that's the kind of thing you need to be in the right mood to do it. At least I do. I can't go out there on a shitty day. If the wind is blowing and it's dusty and it's cold, or you just feel miserable. And, with allergies, if the wind is blowing, it's just awful. It's because all of the dust is blowing, all of the pollen is blowing off of the trees, and you just want to sit inside. There's days if it's a bad day, I just go back to bed for a couple hours and, try again later, High productivity is hard to do working around a job, I don't have... There was days, if I had a shop outside, I could get home, eat something, and then go out to the shop and work for 2 hours. But literally, it takes me 45 minutes some days just to drag everything out, and then, half an hour to put everything back again, or, So if you only had 2 hours to work, you'd spend most of it just getting set up, and then you'd never get anything done. So if I'm looking at a project, I really got to think, step one is get the welder outside. Do I have enough mental energy to even make it worth it that day? When I worked for the post office in El Paso, it got to the point I was sleeping in the truck at work or in the area and then coming home on the weekend, and I'd have all these ideas, and I'd get home and I was just exhausted from working, and I'd end up not doing anything on my day off except for getting ready to go back to work again. And that sucked. You're like, man, you're never going to get anything done out here. So it was a constant struggle. I think what I would prefer, if I got a job like the one at TxDOT, then I'd have enough money and don't sell the ranch. But what I'm learning is, well, actually two things. I can do what I can do, but I can't control what everybody else is doing, right? So I can't just walk in and say, "I'll take this job, please, thank you. I'll come tomorrow. I'll be ready to work." It's like, no, they have to decide to hire you. You can decide you would like to do that job, but you don't have any control really of if you get the job. If they already know somebody, they're probably going to hire them. So that's, it's like, you see a girl and you got a crush on her. It's like, that doesn't necessarily mean that she's going to like you. Same thing, basically. Because I signed a contract with the realtor. So if somebody shows up with money, I will sell the ranch. That's, if that happens, I'm not going to I changed my mind. I hadn't really known or hadn't thought much about a local job, because thinking about it, I didn't think there was any jobs that I would want to do in the area. So I was like, yeah, the easy, some of it, yeah, the easy way out was to sell the ranch, right? Because then I'd have the money to go do something else. A phrase that I've used a few times out here is, for myself and looking at some of the people that are out here, it's like, okay, they basically came out here and are waiting to die. This is not the land of opportunities in this county, really. When I bought the property, my plan was to leave Austin and do the same job. I was a mechanic for the Postal Service. I fixed mail trucks, did maintenance on them. there is the same position in El Paso. And the manager in Austin had just come from El Paso. And it was just kind of like, tile shuffling game or something, where he says he just left and they were looking at 3 or 4 people, the lead techs, that could move up into another position, and then that would free up a position that would move into the manager position. Okay, so him coming should have left, because I was way lower than management. But if everybody moved up one spot, so a new manager and then the shift lead, and then a level 9 would move up to shift lead, and then a level 8 was what I was doing. Okay. So we kept watching for it, and it never happened. And I'm looking, I was like, hey, Danny, what's going on over there? And he's like, well, it seems like none of the 3 people that should have moved up are really as good as we thought they were, or they just didn't want the responsibility. And so that put basically that just kind of squashed, I was trying to think of another word, but that just kind of squashed my whole opportunity to go there, right? So then I ended up taking a different position in El Paso for the post office, because I already was making payments on the land out here, and also my allergies in Austin were horrible. I had to get out of Austin. I just was like, I felt like I was literally drowning most days. It was just, you just really, I'd get home and I'd lay down on the floor in front of the air conditioner and try to breathe, I just, it was the worst place I'd ever lived for allergies. 20 years ago, I didn't know I had allergies. I probably did, I just didn't know. I ended up taking a different job in El Paso. I lost $20,000 right off the top. I took a huge pay cut. And then I'm driving from here to El Paso every day, 5 or 6 days a week. Holidays we work 6 days a week, or 7 sometimes. So then I made a little truck camper. That's where that came from. And I slept in the parking lot at work, and then I'd go to the library during the day because I worked an evening shift, and I'd eat at Denny's, and I was still saving money versus driving my 4x4 truck 100 miles each way every day on, the big Baja tires. It's like I was at the point I could have maybe bought a cheaper car, but then the road, and the KLR was actually pretty good, but 100 miles through the desert each way on a motorcycle and getting off at midnight and coming home, by 12:30, 1:30 in the morning when you're just exhausted. I was on the verge of falling asleep on the motorcycle. It's, not a good way to live. So then I started just staying at work instead. I had a sort of a plan. It wasn't like I was going to come out here and not work. My plan was work. If I was doing that commute but still making $60,000 a year like I was in Austin, I would have been set. Because I was paying, I don't know, what was my rent in Austin? Like $1,000 a month or something like that. My land payment out here was a fraction of that. So I was like, man, I'm going to be making out pretty good, And then I started wearing out the truck and wearing out the tires, and it's like, nothing ever works out. Everybody comes out here like, oh, it's so cheap. But there's no opportunity. We got to drive an hour to get to a dollar store. Well, yeah, for me from here, it's $1 to the nearest dollar, or an hour to the nearest dollar store, which, just has basics, You got 2 gas stations in town. They've got, a good supply of beer and chips, but not really groceries, So you kind of need a vehicle, but if I wasn't working, I couldn't afford to keep a vehicle running or to keep it legal, like, insurance. I think insurance was higher here than it should have been because Interstate 10 is right there, and there's a lot of accidents on the freeway in our zip code because of all of the people driving past. People living here aren't necessarily running into each other. It's all of the California people that are leaving California and the mass exodus are all driving right past us, and they're crashing into each other. but it's making our insurance more expensive here. So, yeah. And that's the chaos in my mind is trying to figure out what do I want? And then in the last month or so, it's been just kind of accepting the idea that one way or another, it's going to be okay, right? I think that was the biggest epiphany in the last 2 weeks even. Like yesterday, a guy came to look at the property. It's the first buyer that's come out here to look, and he looked at several other places, and I got the feeling this wasn't what he wanted, but that's okay. It was only the first guy. But I remember thinking in the moment, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does, but if the place sells, I got money, but I'm going to miss the place and the opportunity I had out here. If the place doesn't sell, I've got everything I have out here, but I don't have any money. Maybe I'll get the job. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll sell the place. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll get the job and sell the place, which would be like all kinds of messed up, right? Now I got money and no place, And then I thought, well, okay. What if I get the job, I make money, if I buy the little truck, pop this guy up again. Maybe we go buy the truck, right? There's a campsite not very far from where the job would be. Okay. I could buy the truck, go to the campsite, ride my electric bike 2 miles to work every day. That'd be great, If I could do that, keep my expenses low, keep my head down, don't have a massive drinking problem, work 3 or 4 years, I could turn around and go somewhere else, buy 5 or 10 acres. I don't need 20. That's one of the things I learned is I didn't need 20 or 40 or 80 acres. It was just a good deal, so I couldn't pass it up. I could do it again. Or do it differently. If I could do it over again, what would I do better? And if I could do it over again with money, that was the one thing I never had. The only reason I was able to build the house is I cashed out my postal retirement. I forget how much it was. I mean, I'd worked a few years and I put a bunch of money in, and I knew I wasn't going to stay there long enough to retire postal. So I just cashed it back out again, right? So that was enough. I paid off the land that the house is on. It was 4 separate parcels. So I paid off the one that I really wanted to keep because the school bus was on it. Then I had the money. I still had the pickup then. I went and got all the wood and I built the house pretty quickly because I had to hurry because I was about to run out of money. And then I went and tried to find another job. And at the time, all I could do was, I was pushing shopping carts at the Sam's Club in El Paso. So I'm back to driving all the way to El Paso again. But that gave me some time to think. And then I realized, well, this is stupid, So then I thought, if I sell the rest of the ranch, then I don't have to go to El Paso all the time. I didn't make any money selling the parts of the ranch that I sold. I just didn't have to pay for them anymore. So that was good. And then COVID happened. It was like, I wish I could say I was smart enough, but that just happened, and that put me in a perfect position because I just stayed out here and avoided everybody and made videos, and by then I was making enough views that I got a couple $100 a month. So, yeah, that's my world. Anyway, that's ridiculously long, but key takeaways. I don't care. I care, but what I think is the important thing now is whatever happens, it'll be okay. And there hasn't been too many times that I've really been able to get my head around that. If the ranch sells, it'll be okay. If I go get a better job, it'll be okay. If the ranch doesn't sell, now I've got a place to live. It's paid for. right? And I just a couple $100 for taxes. That's basically it. So if I can get, if I can make a few $100s a month, I'm fine. Maybe I'll never finish the house. All right. If I just keep my head down and just keep chipping away, I could work 1 or 2 days at the motel, and then we're fine. I'll just keep working on projects out here as I get time and money, and lately there's been people like on the trike. Joseph sent the money. I put the wheels on the trike. We can look at that as a possible project. The electric KLR has been a dream of mine for, oh man, probably at least 20 years that I've been thinking I wanted to do something like that. When I was living in Canada, this would have been after 2009 when the economy tanked the last time, or one of the times. I went back up, stayed at my mom's place. My brother was there, and he had the idea he wanted to make a diesel-powered motorcycle. And there was a place that, in fact, where the place that I bought the first KLR was the same place. They called it Recycle, right? Like recycling, but it was re-cycle. I think that's what it was called. So the idea was, it was basically an auto wrecker that only sold motorcycles. And so there was lines of just frames and stacks of wheels and then motors on a shelf, and then inside was like just rows of fenders and all the plastics and gas tanks and all that kind of stuff. So we go there, and this was just the most fun field trip ever. So we get there and we look around, and at first all he was going to do is buy a frame, and we got to looking, and it's like, well, a little bit further over there was frames with suspension and wheels attached. And I'm like, man, if we got enough money, why don't we get that? That way you don't, because you're going to come back later and not be able to find the part that you need to put together. This way you got everything. You just go buy a motor and plunk it in there. So he goes to, this was in Canada, so Princess Auto is kind of loosely the Canadian version of Harbor Freight. I think Princess Auto is better. It probably is better. It's just personal preference, but they had a lot of stuff that Harbor Freight I don't think has, but Anyway, so there was a little agricultural diesel motor. It'd be like a Briggs and Stratton, only whatever their brand was, but it was diesel. So his plan was he was just going to get a centrifugal clutch on it, and it was a while before he realized that the diesel motor didn't spin fast enough to engage the centrifugal clutch. It just operated at a lower RPM. And I don't know that he ever really looked at it after that. But at the same time he was doing that, and this was like 15 or 20 years ago, I kept thinking, man, I want to do the same thing, only mine's going to be electric. And at the time, lithium batteries really weren't as available as they are now. So now is the time to do it. But I have to talk to my brother and say, hey, 20 years later, I finally got the electric motorcycle. What happened to the diesel motorcycle? Yeah. Anyway, life is funny like that. You get an idea in your head, and we're impatient, right? Oh, I want it right now, And maybe now isn't the best time. Maybe it's going to take a while. Because 20 years ago, there's no way I could have pulled this off the way I did now. And the last 4 or 5 years of messing around with the Turtle and the Delta projects and the electric bike and the solar electric bike and then the 22 trip back and forth, and most of the batteries I have now I got on the 22 trip because of some people I met, and they were able to go into a bike shop and they donated us several e-bike batteries that didn't work. And this guy Ryan that was on the trip, he knew how to fix them. So they walk out with this just pile of batteries, and in camp that night they're fiddling around with it, and by the next morning they had 4 of them working. And I ended up with 2 that worked and 2 that don't work. And then when I got home after watching him, I'm like, oh, okay, this is how you do it. Okay. So now I've got 4 batteries that I didn't have before. And those are what's going to run the KLR, or that's what ran Turtle, and that's what ran Delta. And the solar charge controller that was on Delta was what I used on the 22 trip. And that's a big part of what I'm doing now is parts get moved from project to project because it would be horribly expensive to, I mean, a single e-bike battery will cost between $200 and $500, you know. If you get a cheap one, it's not going to be as good, or it's not going to go as far. If you get a really good one, it'll go twice as far. So it's going to even out, right? But, you know, it's like anything else. If you're just starting a job and you don't have any money, you get the cheapest pair of shoes that are black because you need a pair of black shoes to work. And by the next payday, that pair fell apart, and you hope you've got enough money on payday to go get the good shoes. Otherwise, you're going to go buy the same pair, and on payday, they're going to be wore out. You know, it's the same kind of thing. So I've been in a remarkably fortunate position that I have attracted all of you people that are watching these videos, and in that group, there's been a lot of people that have helped support me on this journey, and I'm always grateful for that. You know, I'll have an idea and I'll put it out there, and somebody will chirp up. It's like, you know, I was like, hey, can everybody give me $5 and I can go do this thing? And you know, by the next day, somebody's like, okay, I sent it to you. It's on the way. You're like, oh, okay, well, thank you very much. Or, you know, I'll get a little ding and I look over and PayPal says I got $400. I'm like, wow, okay. I'm used to my world where I'm scraping by, and I forget that other people just have money that they can afford to invest, you know, or just give me. But yeah, and also, you know, sincerely, thank you. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. You know, it's like, I always wanted to be the person helping somebody. It's weird to have somebody helping me, but I do appreciate it. And you know, over the years, there's been, you know, times where I've helped other people, and, you know, you stop on the side of the road, help somebody change a tire, you know, you pay it forward, or, so there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of good people left. That's worth remembering. So, yeah, I think that, you know, the takeaways is, well, and the other thing too is, okay, it doesn't matter. It does, but it doesn't. It's going to be okay. It's going to work. Something is going to work. And this is like an old cartoon probably. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And maybe the thing you're working on isn't what ends up being the thing. But if you just sit there, it's like Mike Dooley, one of the guys on The Secret, the movie The Secret. He's like, you got to get out and get in the dance. You've got to take the first step. If you're just sitting there on your couch in your underwear, you know, it's like Oprah isn't going to call. But if you get out there and you do something, that long roundabout trail, somebody's going to notice you doing something. You know, I don't know how many times on the 22, I would be riding my bike and I would just stop, take a picture, fix a flat tire, rest because I was tired. I just gone up a big hill. So I'd be off to the side, just, you know, trying not to throw up on my shoes kind of thing. Or just letting the sun recharge the battery, you know. Halfway up a hill, you just run out of legs and you run out of battery, so you pull off and you let the sun shine, and now you look over, okay, I got enough, I can make it up the hill now. Plus then you've had time to breathe. But just by being out there, I would have people stop and see how it was, and then they start checking me out and, you know, looking at the bike, and they're like, oh, this is really cool, and they'd ask you what you were doing, and, you know, so I'd say, you know, it's, there's 22 veterans a day that are committing suicide. And so my goal was to ride 22 states in 2022 to help raise awareness for the 22 veterans. And I wouldn't even ask, but they'd be like, oh, do you want some money? Here's $20. You can get yourself something to eat today. I'm like, oh, I mean, that just meant the world that day, you know? But you had to be out there doing it. You didn't have to ask for money, but you had to be out there doing it. That's kind of what I'm thinking now, is selling the ranch may or may not happen. But I can't just sit here and wait for the ranch to sell. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to be working on my projects, making the videos. I'm going to be applying for jobs. And I'm going to keep my eyes out for opportunities. And it may, the ranch may never sell. I may never get the job, but something else will happen. And that's okay. So you just keep taking the steps and you're looking for opportunities. You don't just sit there and focus so hard on one thing and ignore everything else. There was a line, I think it was on The Secret again, probably Mike Dooley, this or something better, right? Because in my little pea brain, I'm going to be focused on one solution. Maybe somebody else will have a better idea. Maybe they'll have something they don't need anymore. And it'll just show up on my doorstep. And I'm like, oh, that's way better than I would have thought of. And they'd be like, I'm not using it. Here you go. That happens. It's, like, oh, I didn't even think about, one, that wasn't something I thought of looking for. Two, it was too expensive, so I wouldn't have thought about it anyway. Three, I was trying so hard to make this thing work that I didn't even have time to think about this other thing. So, and that's kind of a weird thing too. We get into a hustle culture where, oh my God, I have to go. Some of my best favorite ideas, not necessarily most successful ideas, but some of my favorite ideas happened on a day where I woke up in the morning and I was kind of lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And sometimes I'll do a video like this. I'll just talk. And all of a sudden something clicks in my head that I didn't understand. I had all the pieces, but I didn't put them together. And all of a sudden it'll click and I'm like, oh, what about that? What if I take these two things that don't belong and I put them together? I had not considered putting the motor from Delta in the KLR when I took Delta apart. That really wasn't on my radar. And it was a couple days after that I happened to look at the trike, the blue ATV trike, and think, well, maybe I could put the KLR motor on the blue ATV trike. Okay. Or maybe I'll put, if I buy, like there's an option I'm looking at, if I upgrade, don't use this electric motor on the KLR. There's a better motor that's out there. Okay. It's a matter of finding a better source of it. It's really expensive from some vendors, but I've found some better prices. So we'll just say $1,000 could get me a better motor. This motor that was on Delta, that would be perfect on the ATV trike. Okay. Why did I not want to ride Delta anymore? It doesn't have suspension, and when the road has washboard, it was really painful. Now, I could put a better seat on Delta, but it's rough enough that I was afraid I would start breaking welds on the frame, and the solar panel was just getting hammered, and they eventually quit working when they flap. And it was, a couple $100 for that panel, so I didn't want it to break. Electrical connections were breaking just from taking a pounding. The wire would actually break out of the connector. So it's rough on vehicles. So if I could have suspension, that would make it better. And the blue ATV trike has at least a rear suspension. The front is not very good, but okay. So that might be something better. The other possibility was if I got actual ATV tires, the ones that were on the trike were completely dry rotted. So they weren't a viable option. I put the trailer tires on because they were cheaper and that would be enough to test with. And then if we had a version that we really liked, then I wouldn't feel bad about going out and buying or asking for people to buy proper ATV tires. And it's just a matter of, I mean, on the bicycle, I've got maybe an inch or two of tire underneath me, and every rock you can feel. But if you got an ATV tire, instead of 50 psi on a bicycle, you'd have, I don't know, 7 or 8 psi. You could run over a rock and not feel it. You know, it just, the tire absorbs it instead of bouncing off of it. You know, if you four-wheel drive, you know, if you're out four-wheeling all the time, the first thing you do when you get off the pavement is you air down. You go from 30 or 40 psi down to 8 or 10 or whatever. A good off-road tire, it can be aired down quite a bit. And then instead of bouncing over all the bumps, you just float over the bumps. Also, if you get into sand, the tire, when it gets flat, it gets bigger on the bottom, and it just floats over the sand instead of digging in. Okay. So either ATV tires or suspension or both. So then I was like, well, I've gone as far as I can with the Delta project because it was based on motorcycle tires, and I can't really air them down enough to make it worthwhile because, again, the sidewall is too small. You know, so if I could have gone ATV tires, and I was looking, I was like, yeah, I found suspension kits, or I could build suspension. I actually bought some shocks. And then I was like, well, I built everything around motorcycle tires and wheels. I'd have to redo all of that to switch over to ATV tires. So then I need axles and hubs and differentials. It was literally gonna be over $1,000 worth of parts just to upgrade to get to the point I could ride it. And then I looked over at the KLR, and I'm like, well, I could just put that back together. And then I realized, you know, I didn't really love the KLR in the gas-powered version anymore. And, you know, when I kind of looked at it as well, I could be an electric. Oh, man, driving the electric KLR is so fun. It's like I am constantly confused because I've been riding an electric bike for several years now. And you just jump on it and you hit the throttle, right? But on the KLR, because I rode the KLR a lot, you know, you got let's see, throttle, front brake, clutch, right? So it's like, okay, in your mind, you're like, okay, clutch is in, start the bike, put it in first gear, rev it up a little bit, slowly let the clutch out, balance the clutch and the throttle as you're letting go. If you're on a hill, you're also covering the front brake so you don't roll down the hill. So you got to let go of the front brake, dump the clutch, hit the throttle all at the same time, and try not to stall the bike. You know, and as you get good at it, you can do it pretty seamlessly. You know, or if you got your foot on the rear brake, then you can let go of the front brake. Okay, so you come to a stop, your front brake and your foot on the rear brake, and you're pulling in the clutch as you stop so you don't stall the motor. Okay. And you hope you're in first gear, because if you forgot the downshift, now you're in second gear or something stupid. Well, on the electric, also, no choke, no motor. On the gas power, you got to start the bike, you got to choke it, you got to get it running, and then as it warms up, then you slowly take off the choke, right? And if you try to go too soon, the bike doesn't want to run. It just bogs and sputters, and, you know, it's just a mess. Electric, at the moment, I don't even have a kill switch hooked up. It's just literally plug in the battery, hit the throttle, and it goes. You know, it's like, okay. I don't have rear brakes because that one's broken. Front brake kind of works, but it's just every time I come to a stop, I'm looking for the clutch and trying to hit the rear brake. And I'm like, oh, wait, I don't have either of those. I just literally stop, and you don't stall it. It just stops. And it's quiet. On the GoPro footage when I was riding around, you can hear the chain slapping because it's an old worn out chain and it's loose and the sprockets have severe hooks on them right now. And you hear a little whine from the motor because it's a geared motor, so there's an internal gearbox in the motor. and then you hear the crunch of the tires on the gravel. It sounds more like an electric bicycle. When I rode the KLR, I wore earplugs. It was always loud, especially at highway speed. It was uncomfortable not to wear earplugs when I was riding it. Because I was riding it for an hour. If I just rode it up and down the road to like go to the store to buy something, it wouldn't be as bad. But yeah, the electric, it is just so quiet and so easy to ride. Yeah, at the moment it doesn't go very fast, but I'm used to going 12 miles an hour anyway. That's how fast I go on the bicycle. The KLR has got monster suspension, compared to the bicycle. I've got this much, I could probably go off a tabletop and not really care on the KLR. It's not the world's greatest off-road bike, but it's so comfortable, and the tires are, 3 times as wide as a bicycle tire. So when I go into loose sand and gravel, it just basically, okay, you're in loose sand, just kind of pay attention, But it's no big deal. It's just so nice. It's nice, Oh, and it's light. I lost, like if a gas tank was full, I think it's a 6-gallon tank. Gas is, 6 pounds per gallon or something like that. So that's 35 pounds plus the weight of the tank itself. The motor weighed 100 pounds. Right. So we just lost 130 pounds right there. And the radiator and, the coolant and yeah, I'm surprised more people aren't doing it, but I think it's coming. Yeah, if I had the money, there's a company called Zero, literally Zero, I think, .com motorcycles. They've been making electric motorcycles for a few years now, and they're nice. They've got 100 to 200 miles range on them. They can probably go 80 or 100 miles an hour. They've got a dirt bike, or like the KLR, what we call enduro. It's a dirt bike that's road legal. So you could ride it down trails, and that would be the thing, is you could ride it on a forestry trail and not annoy everybody. If you just go slow, probably nobody's going to care. Maybe it's legal, maybe it's not. Some trails are bicycle only, but if you were on a forestry road, you'd have the experience of just silently going through the forest and not scaring all the deer. There's days that on the bicycle, I see things that you just don't see when you're in the truck. I've had days where I've seen a jackrabbit and a roadrunner and a coyote all on the same day, Which, if you're making noise, they're long gone. They don't, you never see them. So it's just fun, And out here, because I've got solar, and that was one of the thoughts, was on Delta, it had its own solar panel, so it could recharge while I was riding, but that's not really practical on a motorcycle. But all I have to do is just when I get home, all of these solar panels that are here are recharging the house battery system. So when I get home, I can plug the motorcycle in, or I can plug the electric bike in, and it recharges. And that's it, I don't need solar on the motorcycle. I just charge it when I get home, because when I get home, it's dark, or basically dark, or getting dark. So when I get home, the battery is charged all day, so I just charge it when I get home. Next day it recharges again. Easy, You charge your phone every day when you get home. Get home, plug in your electric vehicle. Everybody has forgotten to plug in their phone at least once, and everybody has ran their car out of gas at least once. So you just learn, It is a little more awkward if if you got an electric car and you forgot to charge it the night before. Yeah, you're going to have to charge it for a while. Like if you got a fast charger, you could charge it pretty quickly. 15, 20 minutes, something like that would get you 100 miles. That's probably enough for that day, But, if you had enough gas to get to the gas station, it's only, I don't know, how fast can you fill up a gas? I haven't drove a car for so long, I don't even remember. But you could get gas pretty quickly and not be late for work. If you had an electric, yeah, you're going to be late for work if you forgot to charge it. Okay, that's just, I think people are, I don't know. I'm surprised at some of the people that don't want an electric car. I guess it depends on what channel you watch on TV, honestly. Which babbling idiot are you listening to? That's a story for another day. But out here, between wind and solar, you could easily run an electric car and never pay to charge it. You could be off-grid and completely run it. But what's really cool is between the electric bicycles and the electric motorcycle now, it's going to be drop dead easy to charge solar at home and never have to buy gas. I mean, winter, yeah, I do burn some gas in the generator. The batteries are getting kind of low. I'm kind of looking at the battery gauge now, but the sun is up and it's going to be a sunny day, so it's going to recover, So maybe 1 or 2 days a week if I'm doing a lot on the computers, and if it was cloudy in the winter, yeah, I'll run the generator a little bit. But this is fun. I take the electric bicycle with the trailer to town and bring back a gas can for the generator. So I'm riding an electric bike to go get gas. That just seems wrong. And even if I use the generator exclusively, so if I burned gas with the generator to recharge the electric motorcycle, right? That seems wrong, but it's more efficient, actually. Because the generator is operating at its peak efficiency, whereas the motorcycle is running anywhere from idle to redline, constantly going up and down. So if I could run the motorcycle on electric, then when I get home, I could recharge the motorcycle with the generator and run the generator at its peak efficiency. Even with the conversion loss, it ends up working out better. That's one of the things that the hybrids are showing us. Like a Prius, or we get into Edison Motors is doing logging trucks. They're still in the early production phase, but they could put a diesel motor running a generator that then runs the electric axles. They've got better torque because electric can pull from 0 RPM. You don't feather the clutch. There's no clutch. You just drive it. And then they've got a battery system and a generator hooked up to a diesel motor. Their prototype, they're using a Cat. They might use a Stirling now. Same thing. They all come from China anyway. Yeah, honestly, it's weird. Most of the manufacturing has gone to China, so we're like, oh, buy American, buy Cat, made in China. Yeah, look it up. Most of these companies are getting made, all their stuff is coming out of China, and then they're rebadging it when it gets here. Or maybe it's made to their spec, but it's not made here. Yeah, that's just stupid. Anyway, what they're realizing is they could haul maybe 50% of the time on an Edison truck or more silently, pure electric, motor off. And then when the battery gets down to a certain point, the generator could turn on automatically, or the driver could turn it on manually if they wanted to, fire up the generator, recharge the batteries, and then it shuts off again and you keep running. So that generator comes on at peak efficiency instead of at idle. They could run half the size of motor, and it only ran half the time instead of running this big giant motor, because you get the big giant motor, like on a logging truck, you need to be able to pull your full load up this first hill. And then you coast down the other side. And then you pull up the next hill, and then you coast down the other side, right? But if you had the generator running, you could take a smaller generator and run it longer and produce the same amount of power. But this big giant motor, it's dead weight when it's coasting down the hill. The electrics, they can do regen. So coming down the hill, not only are they able to recapture some of the energy going down the hill, it's slowing the engine down. It's like, like running a Jake brake coming down a hill. It slows you down without using up your brakes, but that just makes noise. The electric motor going down the hill in regen, it's recharging the battery. It's giving them really good braking force before they hit the actual friction brakes, right? Yeah. So this came up a couple times, and I've looked at it, and this may still happen. I have a little inverter generator, one of those little plastic-looking generators. It's like 1,800 watts continuous, 2,300 watts peak, I think. I don't know that I ever got this on a video. I used it a few times on the back of Delta just as an experiment. I have a electric bike charger that can charge at 15 amps, which is way more than I need for a single bike battery, but what I realized is if I had 3 or 4 batteries together, 15 divided by 4 is about 4 amps per battery. That's what I charge the batteries at. So I could charge all 4 batteries at the same time and get them done quicker. If I'm running a generator anyway, I could just start the generator and charge 4 bike batteries in a couple hours instead of it taking 8 hours. Okay. So I put that same charger and generator on the Delta trike and rode to town and back and just left the generator running. And I got back and the bike battery is fully charged. So I just shut the generator off and I can park the bike and I'm done. I don't have to plug it in. It's already fully charged. And because I'm using less than 1,500 watts, the motor was only 750 watts and I don't run it. You pull a lot of amps when you're first starting, accelerating, but then you get up to speed and the amps drops down. Okay. So the generator wasn't really working up a sweat. And so the little inverter generators use way less gas. They throttle down when they aren't under a load. So you just put it in eco mode. So that, I think it holds a gallon of gas. That gallon of gas could get you, I don't know, probably hundreds of miles. I never did any long range testing on it, but it was insignificant. Where if I was driving the motorcycle with the gas motor, I think I could get 30 miles to the gallon with the KLR. Maybe 40. I forget. It's been a while. I got less than that going to El Paso because I was running it wide open. I was running 80 miles an hour just trying to get to work. It did a lot better at 60 miles an hour. KLR wasn't made for freeway riding. Anyway, so if you don't have to run wide open all the time, anything will do better. Just slow yourself down, drive in the slow lane, save some money, I remember looking one time, there was a Nissan Leaf that was for sale. So I just started doing the numbers, right? Like, how much solar would it take to get a Nissan Leaf charged in a day? And it could be done, but the scale of it was, even a Nissan Leaf compared to an electric bicycle or electric motorcycle, it needs a lot of, it would be, I don't know, $10,000 worth of solar to recharge it if you needed to drive it every day. Which, that's kind of the problem out here, is I would have to have at least 100 miles range just to get from here to a fast charger in town. So if I think Walmart, some of them have fast chargers now. So if I could get to the fast charger and then plug it in and go do my shopping and then come back out and probably have to wait a little bit and then it would be charged and then I'd have enough to get home with like about 0% left over, right? It would just barely make it. And then I'd have a dead battery and I'm out here. So then you're like, well, if you had to go anywhere the next day, you'd have to start the generator just to recharge the car. So that kind of defeats the purpose. If you could run it on solar and wind and recharge it out here. So then I started looking, well, okay, I could the trick would be, and I've seen people starting to do this, you go buy a used car, a used electric car, or a wrecked electric car, and you take its battery out, and you have 2 or 3 spare batteries, and then you hook them up to your solar, and so when you get home, you hook up a cable from the 3 broken car batteries. You know, the batteries are still good, but they came out of broken cars. So you take the 3 spare batteries and you use that to fast charge your car, right? Because if you only had 1 battery with the efficiency loss, you wouldn't quite do it. But if you had 2, it would work, right? And you can buy those for $7,000. I've seen them used $5,000, $7,000 that, you know, maybe had 80% capacity and they came out of a wrecked car. Okay. So that would be the way to do it. But, you know, you're talking thousands of dollars. If you lived, you know, if I lived in El Paso, there's fast chargers everywhere. I could charge once a week when I was shopping. It wouldn't even be a burden. This is like if you lived in an apartment, and that's kind of the downside of apartments is you can't have your own fast charger at the apartment usually. If you had your house, you charge your car off of the same kind of circuit that your electric dryer runs off of. So if you were building a house, or you'd have an electrician come in and just give you another 30 amp or 50 amp circuit, and you're done. Get home, you know, most people don't drive 200 miles every day. Out here in Texas, we kind of do, the people that have cars. You know, if I was going to work and back every day, it would be about a 200-mile commute to El Paso and back, you know, so that would be significant. If I had a vehicle that had 200 or 300 miles range, like if I had the job I had in El Paso, if I had that now and I had something like a Tesla, well now the Cybertruck or something like that, find a place to charge after work would basically be it. So I'd sit there and let it charge, eat my lunch or something like that, and then drive home. And you'd have enough range to drive home. Maybe not charge it at home. What I was thinking is just round trip, and so that's kind of how I used to do it with the gas-powered truck. I'd get gas in El Paso because it was cheaper. I'd drive home, drive back, go to work. Coming out of work, I'd hit a gas station and fill up, and I just did that every day. Every day I filled up. I had enough range. I could do, basically, if I started here, I could go to work, back, and to work, and then fill up. But it just made more sense to just fill up every day so I didn't forget, right? All these ideas. That was going to be a bunch of little videos, and I don't know if I'm going to split them up or not. Some people will watch it. It's like a smorgasbord, right? It's kind of a... I talked about the notifications and the metrics and the analytics and the algorithms and stuff. If you release too many videos that are long talking videos and nobody watches them, your ratings go down and you're less likely to get promoted. If you do a bunch of short videos that everybody watches, your ratings go up and you get more promotions. So doing a video like this is going to kill your numbers. Anyway. Alright, 8:24 in the morning. Tuesday. Sure is nice not going to work every day. Alright, that's it for now. Stay tuned. We will... I don't know what we're going to do next. Well, I know what I'm doing today. But I don't know what the next video is going to be. Bye. Subscribe.